This is FilmBookCast.
FilmBookCast.
FilmBookCast, the official podcast of FilmBook. Get ready for the latest in film news, TV show news, and theatrical reviews. FilmBook's podcast starts now.
Hello and welcome to FilmBookCast, the official podcast of FilmBook. I'm Kevin Allen. If you're tuning into FilmBookCast for the first time, welcome and thank you. If you listened before, welcome back and thank you. Here are some of the stories I'll be talking about this week. Health officials say Los Angeles County has more coronavirus cases than any other county in the United States. That report comes as New York moves one step closer to restarting TV and film production. Two white actresses have stepped down from voicing biracial characters in hopes of allowing mixed-race or black performers to have the roles. The release date of the highly anticipated Christopher Nolan film Tenet gets pushed back again, and the DC Universe is turning back the clock in search of the next Batman. I'll tell you which actor's in line to be the once and future Dark Knight. I'll also have a review of Becky. It's a thriller that's as gory as it is predictable. And while I always think it's great for actors who are known for playing certain types of characters to take on a completely different role, Kevin James, you picked a terrible time to play a neo-Nazi. In fact, shame on everyone involved with the release of this film for not reading the room a little better. As black people continue to be killed at the hands of police and protesters across the nation and the world lend their voices to the Black Lives Matter movement, the decision to release a movie where the bad guy is a neo-Nazi and a little white girl comes to the rescue of two black people is insensitive, self-serving, and myopic. You can find more FilmBookCast podcasts on film-book.com by using the search term FilmBookCast. You can also email us at podcast@film-book.com with FilmBookCast in the subject line. Johns Hopkins University says Los Angeles now has the highest number of coronavirus cases of any county in the nation. The university reported over 89,000 total cases in LA County as of Wednesday, meaning the county's infection rate is about 8%. That statistic comes nearly 2 weeks after California allowed TV and film production to restart, along with a host of other reopening measures. Deadline.com reports that many in Los Angeles are complaining that COVID tests are not available. Earlier this week, LA's mayor said the city's testing sites were maxed out and promised to add more ASAP. New York State has released its guidelines for restarting TV and film production. Rules handed down by the Empire State on Wednesday allow for principal photography with no more than 10 people on a shoot, in-office pre- and post-production work, location scouting, and construction. New York City, which entered Phase 2 of reopening from its COVID lockdown this week, has also begun accepting film permit applications for work starting June 30th. New York City is the former national epicenter of the global pandemic, but has seen its infection rate drop even as the virus surges elsewhere around the country, including in, as you just heard, California. Meantime, Vancouver has released official coronavirus guidelines to allow film and TV production to restart. However, it should be noted that Canada's border is still closed and a 14-day quarantine is still required for anyone entering the province. That means it's not clear when any major projects will start back up. Deadline.com reports that some shows that shoot in Vancouver are hoping to be up and running by mid-July or August. It seems like it will take individual productions at least that long to hammer out the specifics of their safety protocols. Another delay for the Christopher Nolan movie that was once seen as a way to tempt moviegoers back into theaters post-lockdown. Tenet was initially slated to arrive in theaters on July 17th, but was later postponed until July 31st. Now it's scheduled to hit theaters on August 12th. In a statement, Warner Brothers said, Warner Brothers is committed to bringing Tenet to audiences in theaters on the big screen when exhibitors are ready and the public health officials say it's time. Not a lot of information has been released about the movie, but from the trailer it looks like John David Washington and Robert Pattinson star in a movie that mixes time travel with espionage. We're getting a look at what the Toronto International Film Festival might look like in the age of coronavirus. Variety reports that this year's festival will be a hybrid of physical screenings and virtual events. Their current plan is for TIFF to run from September 10th through the 19th and will include screenings of roughly 50 films during its initial 5 days. But that plan is subject to approval by city and provincial health officials. The Toronto International Film Festival generates more than $200 million in annual economic activity for Toronto and Ontario, which helps spur the festival's organizers to come up with a plan for operating safely during COVID-19. Other film festivals such as Tribeca or Cannes have been canceled, postponed, or reconstituted as virtual events. Gone with the Wind has returned to HBO Max after it was removed earlier this month due to its benign portrayal of American slavery. The film now features a new introduction by film scholar and Turner Classic Movies host Jacqueline Stewart, which addresses the film's problematic depiction of the antebellum South. The streaming service also added 2 companion videos along with the return of the film. One video features a panel discussion on the film's controversial legacy, and another provides more information about Hattie McDaniel, who in 1940 became the first African American to win an Oscar for her portrayal of the enslaved Mammy. Gone with the Wind, which came out in 1939, has long been the subject of criticism, with some saying it portrayed the Confederacy with sentimentality and fondness. Recent protests, sparked by the police killing of George Floyd, renewed these concerns. Actor Michael Keaton is in talks to play Batman once again. According to The Hollywood Reporter, Keaton has been approached to play the Caped Crusader in Warner Bros. DC movie The Flash. And the deal wouldn't just be for a single movie. Sources tell The Hollywood Reporter that Keaton could appear in multiple DC movies in a capacity similar to Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which would be part mentor, part puppet master. Keaton starred in 1989's Batman and the sequel in 1992. If Keaton does put on the cape and cowl once more, it would truly be a case of Batman Returns. Yeah, that was bad. But I haven't used the cricket sound effect in a while, and I thought it was time. The director of such beloved films as The Lost Boys, St. Elmo's Fire, and 2 Batman movies has passed away. Variety reports that Joel Schumacher died on Monday after a year-long battle with cancer. Schumacher was a costume designer before he began directing, and critics say his fashion sense helped him create a string of stylish films in the 1980s and 90s. Schumacher directed Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, but I would be remiss not to include that Schumacher was behind the camera for the film adaptation of Andrew Lloyd Webber's The Phantom of the Opera, which, despite lukewarm reviews, earned 3 Oscar nominations. More recently, Schumacher directed a few episodes of Netflix House of Cards in 2013. Joel Schumacher was 80 years old. Time to take a look at some movie trailers. If watching a trailer or movie about the possible extinction of humanity isn't too triggering for you right now, check out the preview for Greenland starring Gerard Butler. People excitedly turn their eyes to the sky as pieces of a comet enter Earth's atmosphere, but it quickly becomes apparent that this is no pretty meteor shower.
We now are getting word that the fragment has hit Central Florida.
Oh my God.
Wait, are some more pieces gonna hit?
Thus begins a race against time for Butler's character to get his family to a reported safe haven in Greenland. The movie is scheduled to land in theaters on August 14th. Prize-winning novel Waiting for the Barbarians is finally getting the film treatment, some 40 years after first being published. The film trailer lays out the story of a magistrate of an isolated frontier settlement who's looking forward to an easy retirement. That is until the arrival of a ruthless colonel who's being ordered to handle border security.
We will put down the enemy, and that will be the end of it.
Mark Rylance, Johnny Depp, and Robert Pattinson star Waiting for the Barbarians will be released on video on demand in digital HD on August 7th. Actress Jessica Chastain stars in the trailer for Ava, the latest in a long line of movies where an assassin gets marked for death by their employer.
She's always been Duke's favorite, but she's a loose cannon and a danger to the organization. I want her killed.
There's a lot of star power in this trailer, including John Malkovich, Colin Farrell, and Common. Personally, I always get suspicious when there's a lot of big names attached to a project. Often that means the plot is less than great. Plus, the trailer appears to show what could be part of the final showdown between Chastain and Farrell's characters. That's an interesting choice. Ava hits Canadian theaters on August 25th. At the time of this podcast recording, no US release date had been announced. Netflix has rolled out a preview of its next animated musical. Over the Moon blends Chinese folklore with a childhood fantasy as one girl goes to great lengths to chase her dreams.
It's not a silly myth, it's real. She's on the moon right now, waiting for her true love.
After her mother passes away, a girl named Feifei becomes obsessed with proving the goddess of the moon is real, so she sets out to build a rocket ship powerful enough to take her to the moon and meet the goddess herself. Over the Moon stars Kathy Ang, Philippa Sue, Robert G. Chu, and is expected to be released this fall. Turning to TV news, actresses Kristen Bell and Jenny Slate have announced they will no longer voice their characters on Central Park and Big Mouth respectively because they believe black or mixed-race actors should have the roles. Bell, who's white, had been playing a biracial character called Molly on Apple TV's Central Park. A statement from the show's creator said that after reflection, Bell and the show's creative team recognized that, quote, the casting of the character of Molly is an opportunity to get representation right, to cast a black or mixed race actress and give Molly a voice that resonates with all of the nuance and experience of the character as we've drawn her. The statement also expressed regret for contributing to anyone's feeling of exclusion or erasure. Bell will now receive a new role on the show. Similarly, actress Jenny Slate had been playing Missy on Netflix Big Mouth. That character is also biracial. Slate is white. A statement by Slate says in part, quote, ending my portrayal of Missy is one step in a lifelong process of uncovering the racism in my actions. Big Mouth co-creators Nick Kroll, Andrew Golding, Mark Levin, and Jennifer Flackett posted a statement as well supporting Slate's decision, saying, quote, "We sincerely apologize and regret our original decision to cast a white actor to voice a biracial character." The creators then vowed to recast the role with a black actor. The writers of Brooklyn Nine-Nine have reportedly scrapped some episodes that were planned for Season 8 so that the show can address the Black Lives Matter movement and policing in America. In an interview with Access Daily, Terry Crews, who plays Lieutenant Terry Jeffers on the show, revealed 4 episodes that were, quote, ready to go were tossed, and that the writing team is starting over in an effort to amplify themes coming out of the movement. Crews said, quote, "This is an opportunity right now for us all to unite and get together and understand what this is and that we have to battle this together." On a somewhat more personal note, I've had a couple of Zoom conversations with one of the co-executive producers of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and he definitely seems committed to making sure the show addresses issues that the protesters have been bringing up these last few weeks, and indeed, for decades. Thanks for not passing the buck, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Jimmy Kimmel has apologized for donning blackface on his sketch comedy show The Man Show back in the 1990s. In a statement to the New York Post, page 6, Kimmel said, quote, "I apologize to those who are generally hurt or offended by the makeup I wore or the words that I spoke." While co-starring on The Man Show with Adam Carolla, Kimmel performed impressions of NBA player Karl Malone, a bit that originated with his stint on LA's KROQ radio station. As far as waiting as long as he did to address the skits, Kimmel said he held back on making a statement because, quote, "as I knew doing so would be celebrated as a victory by those who equate apologies with weakness and cheer for leaders who use prejudice to divide us. That delay was a mistake." Kimmel, now the host of late night show Jimmy Kimmel Live, is taking a break from the show for the summer. He'll be back behind the desk in September and is scheduled to host this year's Emmy Awards on September 20th. Tina Fey has asked streaming platforms to remove episodes of 30 Rock that included blackface, and her request is being honored. According to Vulture, 4 episodes of the hit NBC show are being removed from Hulu and Amazon Prime and are no longer available to purchase on iTunes and Google Play. The change comes after Fey, the show's star and executive producer, sent a note to distribution partners asking them to pull the episodes. They'll also no longer air on TV. In a statement, Fey said in part, quote, "I understand now that intent is not a free pass for white people to use these images. I apologize for the pain they have caused." Similarly, Hulu has removed 3 episodes of Scrubs which featured characters in blackface, following a request by the show's creator, Bill Lawrence, and ABC Studios. That's according to Variety. Scrubs aired for 9 seasons from 2001 to 2010, with the first 7 broadcast on NBC and the final 2 on ABC. Soap opera The Bold and the Beautiful briefly stopped production last week in order to upgrade its COVID-19 testing capabilities to accommodate, quote, "the large volume of testing needed." According to Variety, the long-running soap's producer blames production delays on the testing lab provided by TV City, where the series shoots, which returned, quote, "several false positive results." The show denies that any of the cast and crew tested were confirmed to be positive for COVID-19 and says that it will switch to a new lab for testing going forward. The Bold and the Beautiful is one of very few series to start shooting again, and other productions likely have much to learn from its immediate need for more coronavirus testing. Given the show's production schedule, it could potentially be on course to start airing new episodes in July. Actor and comedian Chris D'Elia has been dropped by Creative Artists Agency, also known as CAA, following sexual misconduct allegations that began to surface last week. That's according to The Hollywood Reporter. D'Elia is accused of sexually harassing underage girls. A number of alleged victims claimed on social media that the comedian harassed them, with some noting that they were minors at the time. Last Thursday, D'Elia denied the allegations, saying in part, quote, "I know I've said and done things that might have offended people during my career, but I've never knowingly pursued any underage women at any point." D'Elia most recently appeared on the Netflix series You, his character was killed off, and a comedy special, No Pain. Showtime will now air its James Comey miniseries before the presidential election. The Comey Rule, a 4-hour miniseries starring Jeff Daniels as former FBI Director James Comey and Brendan Gleeson as Donald Trump, will air September 27th and 28th. According to The Hollywood Reporter, Showtime had previously announced a late November premiere, putting its air date several weeks after the November 3rd election. The Comey Rule is based on former FBI Director James Comey's memoir and will give a behind-the-headlines account of the turbulent events surrounding the 2016 election and its aftermath through the story of 2 powerful figures, Comey and Trump. It's time for a look at TV trailers. It will be a while until fans of The Handmaid's Tale will get some new episodes to watch, but a new trailer suggests the main character, June, will be leading an underground movement to free Gilead.
These women deserve to be helped. But I can't do this alone.
If you're not familiar with the show or the book it's based on, The Handmaid's Tale is a story of life in the dystopia of Gilead, a totalitarian society in what was formerly the United States. Facing environmental disasters and a plunging birth rate, Gilead is ruled by a twisted fundamentalism in its militarized return to so-called traditional values. Elizabeth Moss stars. The trailer confirms that new episodes won't arrive until 2021. Also from the book turned into TV show file, streaming service Peacock is bringing Aldous Huxley's Brave New World to the small screen.
You just need to embrace this place and let it be wonderful.
What could possibly go wrong? Once again, if you're familiar with the book, all that so-called peace and harmony comes with a high price. Brave New World will be available on Peacock beginning on July 15th. Okay, one more book turned into TV show for this week. I promise this is the last one. Foundation is coming to Apple TV+. It's based on the award-winning sci-fi novels of the same name by Isaac Asimov. The books were one of the inspirations for Star Wars, and based on the trailer, it's not hard to see the parallels.
The Empire will fall. Order will vanish.
From the official synopsis, Foundation chronicles a band of exiles on their monumental journey to save humanity and rebuild civilization amid the fall of the Galactic Empire. Jared Harris and Lee Pace star. Foundation will be available on Apple TV Plus sometime in 2021. In the final TV trailer for this week's podcast, a docuseries that offers a candid look at comedian Amy Schumer. Expecting Amy is a 3-part documentary that follows Schumer as she juggles her pregnancy with her stand-up career.
When someone gets pregnant, some women are like adorable, and then some you're like, oh, damn, I know where I am.
Expecting Amy, which was produced by Schumer herself, arrives on HBO Max on July 9th. This week's movie spotlight is on Becky, starring Lulu Wilson and Kevin James. It's directed by Jonathan Milott and Carrie Munyon. It was written by Nick Morris and Ruckus Skye. Normally I would get into the review by first laying out some of the plot. As you may recall from the intro of this podcast, I have some thoughts about this movie that I would like to share before discussing plot points. I don't want to watch a movie written by 2 white men and directed by 2 white men, where a white main character turns to an African American woman and says, "That's why you never let them mate with other breeds." I don't want to watch a movie where the white male villain struts around with a giant swastika tattooed on the back of his head and an Aryan Brotherhood tattoo on his chest and shouts for the Brotherhood, where the fact that he's a neo-Nazi has nothing to do with the story. The MacGuffin the bad guy is after may in fact have a connection to his racist beliefs, but that's never clarified in this movie. It's like the writers made the villain a Nazi because it's a shortcut to having the audience root against him. Having Kevin James spout racist propaganda that does not advance the plot in any way comes off as a masturbatory way for the writers of this film to say these things without consequences. The fact that the person spouting those things dies a gruesome death at the end does not change the fact this film is little more than an ultra-violent revenge fantasy from a bunch of white men who clearly didn't have a problem using racism as a shortcut in their lazy, predictable story. If you don't like that opinion, feel free to listen to another podcast. Now that I've shared those thoughts, here's what else I have to say about the film. If, and that's a big if, you can get past the neo-Nazi part of Kevin James' character, I will say that his performance suggests he's got a future with dramatic roles. The script in this movie does not give James a ton of great stuff. It is a horror movie after all, but there are some flashes of nuance that make me think Mr. James will find success in dramatic roles if he doesn't keep playing Nazis. Let me back up and set up the story. Actress Lulu Wilson stars as the titular Becky, who's a ball of anger and resentment following the death of her mother about a year ago. Becky's dad, Jeff, who's played very capably by Joel McHale, unintentionally adds to Becky's angst by bringing her to the family's lakeside vacation home that's filled with memories of Becky's dead mother. Oh, and Jeff's not only invited his new girlfriend Kayla and her son to stay with them for the weekend, Jeff also tells Becky that he and Kayla are going to get married. Becky's Nightmare Lake trip goes from bad to worse when a group of escaped convicts, led by the neo-Nazi named Dominic, invade the home looking for a key. Dominic, who's played by Kevin James, never says exactly what the key is for, nor why the key is hidden on the property in the first place. There's nothing to suggest that the house was recently purchased by Becky's parents, so it seems odd that at some point in the past, Dominic randomly chose to hide his MacGuffin here. Even a quick line of Dominic standing in the home's kitchen and saying something like, "I remember Mom standing right over there and making me some peanut butter and jelly," or something like that would at least suggest a shared history between the house and Dominic. But we get none of that. In convenient horror movie fashion, Becky is away from the house and has the key in her possession when Dominic and his ragtag bunch of racist followers take her dad, Kayla, and Kayla's son captive. What follows is a tepid game of cat and mouse as Becky picks off Dominic's henchmen one by one. Let me use Die Hard as an example to illustrate why Becky's confrontations in this movie feel very meh. In Die Hard, there's tension because you know where John McClane is and where the bad guys are and what's at stake. As I've already said, it's not clear what's at stake since we don't know what the key opens. And the fight scenes are shot in a way that Becky never truly feels in danger. In fact, Becky has plenty of time between the standoff with each of her attackers, so it feels like she's always very prepared for the fight. Thus, low stakes. Anyway, in true Final Girl fashion, Becky ends up in a final showdown with Dominic. You know how the fight's going to end, and Dominic's death is somewhat similar to how one of his henchmen is killed. More lazy writing. In the end, I don't have a lot of good things to say about Becky. If, and once again, that is a very big if, you don't mind watching Kevin James play a neo-Nazi in the current climate, I think fans of his would enjoy seeing that James is capable of a dramatic role. Hopefully the next time James gets such a role, it will be in a much better movie. Thank you for listening to this episode of FilmBookCast. You can find more of my work on film-book.com. Just search Kevin Allen or FilmBookCast. You can also find me on Twitter at KAllenNYC. If you listen to this podcast on iTunes or another podcast service, please rate and review this episode. If you're listening to this podcast on our YouTube channel, FilmBook Podcast, please like our video, subscribe to our channel, and leave us a comment in the comment section. It helps other people discover our podcast. Please also consider becoming one of our patrons on Patreon at patreon.com/filmbook. Your support helps us create more engaging content. You'll find our Patreon link below in the description. If you want to tweet about this podcast, use the hashtag FilmBookCast. Tune in next week for a new episode of FilmBookCast. Thanks for listening. I'm Kevin Allen. And remember, Black Lives Matter.